Thank you for the introduction. I was at a talk that Peter Sutherland, who some of you may know or have heard of, he gave a talk on migration and migration policy and the difficulties that it's, you're going to wonder where this is going, by the way, where the issues that are facing Europe. And there was a long introduction about his various achievements and fantastic accolades and awards in all parts of the world, whether it be in politics in Ireland, the legal issues here in Ireland, Goldman Sachs International, UN Special Ambassador in charge of migration and so on. And he got up and he said, that was a wonderful introduction, even if I did write it myself. And I was hoping it wouldn't end, but then I remembered how hard it is to remain humble for much longer. And I just thought, I thought of that actually when John was speaking. And humble, I'm just joking, obviously. Humble is apt in terms of, for myself, it actually is really quite humbling to be asked to address the audience here tonight and the brand forum generally. The brand forum, as John has said, has been something which has been very close to me for a long number of years, and it goes back to a real drive, a real passion for brands, a real passion for food brands that I've had for a long number of years and throughout most of my career. And it goes to the heart of what I think we're about here tonight, which is how do we actually identify from each other and learn from each other as to what's actually going on in the branded world and in the food world generally. Being asked to come back is a bit like an alumnus coming back to address a class and sort of graduation night. So it's a bit daunting. I should be wearing kind of a formal suit and have a mortarboard and so on. The only difference is, I guess, would be that the chair of the Board of Governors was actually in the same class as me in college, which is Michael Carey, who's currently chairing the whole Board B organisation. And the class head, John Fanning, actually succeeded me, which is a bit of kind of a juxtaposition in terms of me coming back as an alumnus. The headmaster of this august educational environment, Aidan Cotter, never gave out extra homework. He only gave out gold stars for good behaviour, so we'd all remember that. But the fourth main difference, I guess, is that you're not a class of students, you're a class of practitioners who daily get involved with and organise yourselves around daily practice around brand management, about business management and food management. And that's very different when you actually look at it. So I'm not going to try and lecture you in theory, and I'm not going to try and do anything other than maybe to start off with something which is interesting, which is from a well-known pundit, which was the originator of the quotes of quotes. Yogi Berra was the New York Yankees. In theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. So hopefully what I'll do this evening is try and give you some practical insights into what we're actually trying to do as a business, and give you some insights into how we're actually shaped. I'm very conscious that some people might say there's a huge difference between where we are and, say, Cassandra, just in terms of how long we are established, our size, and indeed my remove from day-to-day brand management. So I don't make any apology for the fact that we are long established. We're in our various guises through various amalgamations. We're around for several generations. And that's very different from the fantastic and inspiring story that Cassandra said earlier on, and well done to Cassandra on that. But we've had to basically learn in the last short number of years about rebuilding ourselves and basically deconstructing and reconstructing ourselves in tandem with the way the market was behaving and the way the market was shaping, and in response to the crisis that hit most of the retail market in Ireland in 2009, in the food market in 2009. Interestingly enough, just on a little sidebar, 2009 was the last year that I think I'm right on this, where Patrick's Day, Easter, and all the bank holidays ran together. And actually everyone knew the building trade had stopped and all the builders had gone home and unemployment was rising and government finances were a bit in trouble. But actually the food market didn't stop. The retail market generally, cars had stopped, but the actual food market continued on. And I remember getting phone calls from people around the end of March saying, what's gone wrong? Why has everything gone so quiet? And everyone said, well, actually, everyone's away on holidays. Everyone's away on holidays. All these bank holidays, Patrick's Day and Easter and all the short weekends and long weekends have confused everyone. They'll be back next month. In April, everyone rang and said, well, they're still not around. Where are they gone? And it was in August we realised they weren't coming back. And that was the start of the food recession, as it were. Anyway, so we're long established, but we've had to learn, in a sense, we've had to learn to start up and start off all over again in many respects. We are large, don't make any apology for that, but that means that we've had to learn how to act small in many respects, because being large is not, being big doesn't stop you being stupid. And we've had to learn how to scale ourselves back to a relevant piece for consumers and for retailers, to make ourselves nimble and flexible and so on, and act in many cases while being big, but act in a local and very micro level. And while I'm 20-something years away from day-to-day brand management, it was my job to try and set the scene and the shape of the business in a way that allowed our brands to work. Because what we found was, and what I discovered having joined the company 10 years ago this week, at a time of boom, that once we hit the skids, we really had to find ways of allowing room for the brands to grow, room for the brands to actually thrive, and that was the real difficulty. So hopefully those lessons will come through, and if not, the samples that are available for everyone to take away will hopefully just give some people some good sort of positive images of the company as we go out. And there are samples, I think, left by colleagues at the back of the room or downstairs later on. And to that point, none of my colleagues in the room, either ex or current, are allowed to ask any questions, because they'll prove me wrong on most of the points. Let me just go back a little bit. 2001 happens to be when the brand forum started. And what I'm trying to do here is to show a context for people. A lot of people in the room here have been in business for several years and many, many years. Some are more start-off and start-up. But just as a context in terms of shaping the way retailers, consumers have actually arrived to this point. Let me just throw out some points. We've seen the introduction of a whole range of different players in the Irish market over a relatively short period of time. 15 years is not long in the total FMCG business. So Marks and Spencer's didn't have simply food. They had one or two food venues, but not really active in the whole food business in Ireland. Deals didn't exist, which is the Irish version of Poundland. Applegreen was actually called Petrogas. Topaz wasn't around. Tesco actually was only just starting off, and really certainly hadn't got into the change for good idea. And Aldi and Lidl were actually just literally thinking of coming to the Irish market. We didn't have Aramark, we didn't have Cisco, who bought Palace, we didn't have Sodexo, or we didn't have them to the same extent, and they weren't as rooted in the Irish total FMCG retail and food service piece. We did have and lost Superquinn since 2001. Superquinn, Shell, BP, Topaz is about to go. It's going to be called Couchard Tar soon enough. Budgeons and Londis couldn't find any Musgraves GB logo to put up, but Musgraves GB effectively has closed up and gone away, and Quinsworth is gone. So it's been masses and masses of change within the customer base within the Irish market. We also have had to deal with the end of the pound, as we had with the punt, and we've had to deal with the end of the groceries order, which was a major seismic change just before 2001 that we have had to deal with, since 2001 that we've had to deal with. No harm actually recognising, especially in the week that we're in, we've had 5 general elections since 2001. We've had 9 Irish golf majors, which is interesting, to just throw it up as a bit of fun. And we've had 3 Six Nations championships. We won't have one this year. We'll be looking to finish 3rd or 4th. And we've had 15 referenda in Ireland since 2001. So the Irish thing has gone through phenomenal changes. Any one of those 5 general elections in a relatively short period of time, that was actually a lot. 15 referenda, we hadn't had the same number in the years and years and years beforehand, and successes around the world, which brought a certain sort of, chutzpah to the Irish psyche. Also, although we've had reports on the food industry in the past, and obviously Bord Bia and Aidan in particular would be very familiar with them, the baking in of the importance of the food industry in Ireland really only became fully manifest with Food Harvest 2020. Subsequent to that, the Prepared Consumer Foods, which affects everyone in this room, the Prepared Consumer Foods strategy was written and accepted by government, and it's been baked into the wider piece, which is the Foodwise 2025. So a huge amount going on in the wider food and retail and food service landscape. We've had beef crises, we've had pig meat crisis and horse meat crisis through the period as well, which have been huge learnings, not only in terms of for the people who've been faced with them, but it also has been a massive issue for the regulatory environment, and it's actually impacted on all the major players in terms of the extra regulation and the compliance issues that we've all had to face. We've had one national task force on obesity with one report. We've had 7 seasons of Operation Transformation, one of which is currently on at the moment, and we're trying to deal with the sugar tax issue. So all of these are affecting all of you, either in your buying behaviours or in your actual production behaviours every day. And sometimes we tend to forget about the context of the whole thing. We've also had the worst ever recession. You can see here the consumer sentiment piece, which is the KBC ESRI measure, falls off the cliff in about 2009, and retails follow it. Retail environment follows it down, and actually hasn't really got back yet to where it actually started. What's interesting enough is that over the period of time, there's been a relatively small recovery in the very recent time in the total volume of food being bought in retail. But effectively, we're still actually consuming less. There's an awful lot less wastage, for instance, in the retail environment. So we're actually, as a bunch of consumers, we're actually not even consuming as much as we did with all the other changes. And value has become a massive, massive issue within the retail market in particular. So whether it's buy one, get one free, special offers, reduced to clears, 2-for-1 offers, value has become a price value rather than a really inherent functional value has become a massive issue. And you can see now the private label now accounts for about 49% of all packs sold in the Irish market, and about 2/3 of all of the top 100 brands as measured by Checkout and Nielsen are actually non-Irish. Only 1/3 are actually Irish. So a fundamentally different landscape than the landscape that I grew up in, came through college in, started off work in, and have dealt with over the last number of years. And all of these have happened in a relatively short period of time. And of all of these have probably every now and then, a bit like a lobster in the boiling water, we don't tend to notice it until it all has happened. But all of these are happening every day, and we've all had to deal with them in different ways, particularly in prepared consumer foods. By my reckoning, about 50% of all of our customers are now internationally based or contracted on the retail side. In other words, they are run by and have their private have their P&Ls dictated to by either Germany, Britain, or other markets. Canada will be soon coming on board with Topaz purchase. About 70% or so of contract food services internationally based and contracted, and we don't know how many of the hotels and coffee shops are owned internationally. But it's fair to say that with the exception of Starbucks, which is operated locally, albeit international name, all the other major high street brands are internationally operated and contracted, and quite a few of the hotels are as well. So the real issue is, given that we actually interact with shops 238 times a year, which is that's nearly 4 or 5 times a week, and given that we actually think of food 400 times a day, we're very, very intense with food, all of us, all the time, and we're very intense with our retailers, and our retailers don't necessarily have the same knowledge of us as they would have had in 2001 because of all the changes that have taken place. If we bring that down to the food market, we have a very high per capita of particular types of food in Ireland. Particularly if I look at milk piece, we have one of the highest per capita consumption ratios of milk, liquid milk, in the world. It is a must-stock item. How many of us get a phone call from at home or remember at home, which is, did you remember the milk? Not having milk at home is and milk. I'll talk to milk mostly rather than the other products we have. Not having milk is a distress purchase. It's actually a big problem. You can't have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee watching the TV. You can't have your breakfast in the morning if you are using cereals. So it is a must-stock distress purchase that applies through the family by and large. It's a real issue. It also has a short shelf life, and the dates are critical in a store, and people are very fixated with how to actually manage the dates. And there's an algorithm that goes into people's minds about how they actually look at product and what is the longest out, nearest in date of the product they want in the store they have to go to on the way home. So it's actually, I don't know how they actually do it. I mean, Facebook have algorithms on certain things. I don't know how they do this one at all. And they do it all the time. The other problem is that there's actually no profit made on average through the industry across the whole of the liquid milk business. So there's 570 million litres of liquid milk consumed in Ireland every year, and no one, on average, there is no money being made on it. And that's a huge issue because people who want to make money, hands up, actually then are trying to compete with what we consider to be economic folly. And we've done a lot of modelling in this to actually prove the point and talk to other stakeholders about it's easy to make milk, particularly when there's it's very easy to get into plastic cases, plastic bottles. It eases the point of entry, and there is overcapacity in the marketplace. So we're just trying to deal with these points and understand where they are. And therefore, there's a question which is, how do you survive in such a large, dynamic and harsh marketplace? And using the very old TV program Cheers, where everyone knows your name, or in this case, where no one knows your name. So when we're going in to talk, with all of that noise going on in the retail environment and the food environment, when we have must-stock lines, which is a commodity purchase, which retailers think of, so long as I have any of it, it'll do. How do we survive? And then you've got value on top of that, which is, do you know what I can do with private label? Because it's very easy for someone to make it for me, and they don't seem to want to make any money. So that's the environment that I've had to understand, and how do I build a brand story, a brand narrative, brand success piece within all of that kind of challenge, and that's what I want to talk about. We adopted a 5-step approach, and it's easy to write this down in this type of chart now. At the time, it was an iterative process where we actually tried to understand exactly what we were trying to do, and effectively, behind this, we deconstructed the business. So we spent a significant amount of time as a senior management team with about 200 different value-adding tasks that we challenged ourselves as to what is that cost center doing? Is it really adding value, and can I avoid it? And if I can avoid it, what will I do with the money that I've saved? And we built a huge amount of data points around the back of the business to understand exactly what we're trying to do, in order to allow us then to develop a clear and simple strategy, right-size the business model to make sure that we were able to do what we wanted to do with the business for the longer term, make sure we had the right amount of support, the right amount of funding for all elements of it, not just brand support, but also in terms of the whole capacity and plant capacity piece, and have something which was based on a single truth that we could really hang around. We could understand, very much like Cassandra's simple truth, done properly. What was our simple truth that we actually could really build a business model around, which we knew that all stakeholders could actually buy into because they genuinely believed it. That 5-step approach has dictated what we do on a day-to-day basis on all of what we do around the business, and including what we don't do anymore. We were a business which had a number of different what we call CPGs, consumer product groupings. So we had cheese, butter, spreads, soups, we had juices, we had ambient juices, we acted as a distributor for other people, we were a franchise operator with Yoplait, we had milk, cream, we had food service, retail and doorstep. So it was a very, very dynamic business, like a Rubik's Cube. And to try and deconstruct all of that to get to the point of what are we trying to do here with all of the changes and the challenges that come down against us and the increased regulations. So let me just go through it. The first step in terms of just getting the simple strategy was we knocked everything back down to 3 things. How can we maximize the core of our domestic business, maximize the revenues around the core of our domestic business, focusing on premium and focusing on house delivery. And house delivery I'll come back to in a few moments. While at the same time recognizing that a 4.6 million population in the Republic of Ireland with already very high per caps is limited in its long-term sustainable goals and deliveries for us. So therefore we had to develop off the island. And the thing that got us off the island is that we know we're very good at making liquid milk. And liquid milk is just consumer milk rather than powdered milk and so on. If we're very good at it, why can we not bring that goodness to other people and make it a virtue in other markets? With a ruthless focus on costs. And I mean, when I mean ruthless, I mean it is a very, very, very strict focus on costs. It includes how to actually acquire volume and then rip out the cost to drop them straight back into our own system. And making sure that we operate across those 3 steps in our strategy is what we actually we talk to all our colleagues and all our stakeholders on all the time. It also allows us, when we're talking in front of customers, to be able to say, this is what we're doing. We make no apology for developing. We're very quiet for a long number of years on how we actually would go about house delivery. We tell all our customers that now. We don't care whether they actually know we're in house delivery or not. It's our business. That's what we do. We also tell them what we're doing with exports. So, sorry, I can't come to a meeting. Why? Because I'm in China. I can't come to a meeting. Why? Because I'm in Dubai. Because that's where we're actually out now trying to develop businesses. And it gives them a sense of, hang on a second, the for grantedness that quite often exists around food and around commodity items can't be taken for granted if we're actually out there developing other business revenue streams. Step 2 was the right business model. And the right business model was quite hard to come to. We had a 39-year relationship with Yoplait. We had just previously, in the previous 3 years, renegotiated the franchise agreement. And we sold it back to them because there isn't room in this market anymore for 2 margins. So the franchise system in Ireland has a major problem coming down, which is the franchise owner, who has a contractual right to a margin, an entitlement to it, and ourselves couldn't coexist. So we chose to sell the franchise back. It was in the public domain, so I'm not breaking any confidences here. We got a bucket of money for it, and we negotiated at the same time that we would become their wheels in Ireland, their distributor in Ireland, which gave us continuity and it helped us contribute to our overall cost base by having this income stream without all of the revenue obligations we had. The ruthless focus on costs means that by the end of 2015, the year just finished, which we just reported on the last couple of days as a group, we've brought our overheads back to the equivalent of 2005. So despite pension increases, despite inflation generally, there's been some deflation on things like energy and so on, but despite all of that, our operational costs have been brought back to the equivalent of 2005, which I think is a massive credit to all of the team in terms of that ruthless focus on costs. We maintained our volume line because even though there was a lot of competitive positions going on, we maintained our volume line by driving very hard on acquisitions through bolt-on acquisitions that we identified, 3 over the relatively short period of time that we put through, including 1 about this time last year. And we moved hard on food service and the export piece to maintain that volume piece. One of the problems we have as a business is the milk is coming off the farm anyway, and we can't tell the cows to stop. The milk is coming at us, and we have to find a home for it, and it doesn't last long. It lasts, once we actually produce it, it lasts for 14 days, so we can't even stockpile it. So we had to find ways of maintaining volume, and food service and exports, along with our home delivery system, has been part of that. And we were very keen to maintain what we call the shape of the model. So we're a branded house, even though we do private label and we do co-packing and we do distribution for other people. We're a branded house, therefore we had to maintain all of the costs. On the top right-hand side, any savings we could get, we have to funnel them down into our sales and marketing piece, because that's what we're about. We're about selling and marketing. We have a sophisticated system in place that allows us to do that efficiently and effectively. We have to make sure we have enough costs saved up in the top right to funnel down into the bottom left and keep us moving in that whole respect. Step 3, and this is where we're a bit different, I guess, from some of the startups. Because we're well funded from a stakeholder point of view and a shareholder point of view, we were able to go back and give them a business case as to how we actually should be able to get hold of more capex for different investments. So these aren't all ours, but the top left-hand one is it's a new facility we've built in Lochagesh in County Monaghan. And our total investment in new plants and lines, not just in terms of the UHT facility, but also deciding that if we wanted to be different and have a long-term sustainable position, we couldn't rely on old packaging, we couldn't rely on old formats, and we just got rid of old machines and reinvested in new ones. And we've been lucky enough from the stakeholder point of view to be able to get 20 million euros over the last 3 years to be able to put in behind our business to invest in capex and in plant and machinery. And we were able to stretch our business model by innovative thinking, including what we're doing with our innovation line, not just product innovation, but packaging, business modeling innovation, and channel innovation, to make sure we had the funding behind that. When it came to support the funding piece generally, we also took the step whereby, and one of the points we got from the trade was they kept on saying, yeah, but you're not really going to support the brands. No one really supports milk in Ireland. What are you really going to do? We signed the contract with Weatherline, which means that we're always on. It's the most advertised brand in Ireland now, Avonmore. We're able to switch between cream and soup sometime, but mostly cream and milks as we want to. So cream at Christmas, cream for Mother's Day, milk most of the year. And it's an always-on approach, which means we're able to go back to the trade and say, we advertise more now than Coke, by a long way, by the way. We advertise more than Diageo, because we're always on through the Weatherline, on top of what else we do. There's no one from RTE here in the room. It's a relatively cost-efficient model for us to be able to use, and we're very pleased because it also has major impacts as well. It very much connects with our farmer community because they actually watch the weather a lot. And that actually so works on a number of different fronts, but the always-on piece means that we're able to guarantee the funding. Now, it doesn't actually sell an awful lot of product, as colleagues in the audience will recognise, but it builds massive recognition and massive opportunity to move the brand into different parts of the country because people now recognise it in a way that they didn't in the past. They're now able to buy into the idea that you can have national milk brands, which is a relatively new phenomenon in Ireland. The fourth step, which is the most crucial one, and actually should be probably the first step, is that we came up with a simple truth that we were able to live by, and also one that we believed in, and in a few moments I'll talk about the fact that we were able to sell it to others. And very much like Cassandra, done properly, we genuinely believe, and we're able to demonstrate, that not all milk is the same. If all milk is the same, then there's no reason for us to have any of what I've just talked about. There's no need for us to have any innovation line. There's no need for us to have any capex. No need for us to look at exports and bring some of the stuff that we're looking at in terms of functional milks into other markets. So if not all milk is the same, what are we going to do about it? So not only was it a defence against what others were doing, but it was a massive call to action. So what are we going to do about this? If it isn't all the same, now what? It's a bit like there's a great expression Jack Welch had, which was, if tomorrow you don't like where you are today, what are you going to do about it? So if tomorrow not all milk is the same, what are we doing about it right now to make sure that we're actually able to deliver on that promise? And what we do is, so there's a number of things that we can prove, but actually, do you know what? It doesn't make much difference when we talk about the highest quality milk, fully traceable, tested 35 times from farm to the back gate of the factory, global standard. That's all fine. That's, in a sense, that's taken as table stakes. The real issue is that not all milk is the same. Is we have continuous innovation and a huge focus on costs, on service rather. Our service level is 99.9% on a daily basis. We know that and the trade need to know, if they order milk from us, they will get it, bar none. They will get it. There's no ifs, ands and buts. That's our commitment to them and our commitment to ourselves. Not all milk is the same. Is we drive alternative channels, and the principal one we drive is home delivery systems, which I'll come back to. And not all milk is the same means that we're able to prove to ourselves and to others that premium is more than just price. It has a real value, and value, it does work. Everyone's talked, and I know it's been talked about in the brand forum over years, about debt in the middle. The problem with private label is it's seen as very cheap and people are able to buy into it. The problem with premium is that people have to have a real functional benefit, and the problem is in the middle, and we know that as well. We see that all the time. You're driven by promotions, you're driven by extra terms from the trade. There is a role for the top and bottom. There's very little room in the middle in terms of a sustainable piece, and you do need to look for that in your business model. So we believe that premium has a real value. It's not a question of price, it's an inherent functional benefit that comes from the product. And that is important to us. What is really important is that we had to be able to make sure that everyone bought into this simple truth and to the strategy and the other elements I've talked about. And the way we did that was we actually started talking to the point where there was no future in us becoming a private label player. The weight of our system, the number of factories we had, the IT systems we had, the long-term leases we had on certain facilities didn't allow us to become a private label player. There is no money in it for us, and we would be sunk by our own weight. And nor could we actually stay as is, which is to become a kind of a branded player purely on the standard branded milk area or standard branded cream area. So people needed to understand that, and it was very easy to demonstrate that, very easy to talk to it, particularly to brand marketeers, and some of them were in the room because they got that very quickly. But the rest of the business got into it very quickly, and all the way down to the shop floor and to our depot structures, where we actually brought this story to life. They also realized that we actually could, because of our innovation centers, we actually could bring consumers real value, functional benefits in milk products. And we identified a way, and I hope colleagues would agree on this, that not all parts of our portfolio are destined for a sustained period of investment and growth, but they do have a real value to our business. They can help the ballast of the business, they can help contribute to overheads, they can help range manage, they can help shelf manage, they can help with our negotiations with the trade. Everything we do has a value. Now that we've deconstructed the business, we need to make sure that people understand what that value is, and in a portfolio management role, things have a worth. Not everything, just because it's not been brand marketed in the normal way, is redundant. It's far from that. It's a different role and different positioning within the piece. What that five-step approach did was it brought a huge amount more clarity with all of the other noise going on in the business, a massive amount of motivation. We can see that through engagement scores that we do on a regular basis with our clients and with our colleagues, which is the whole issue of just engaging with strategy, engaging with the corporate structure. It brought an awful lot more focus to what we were doing. We stopped doing things that actually weren't adding real value. All of them improved. All of them showed dramatic improvement and has made the business easier to identify and success easier to work with. So in a sense, what we did is we added and subtracted. We obviously took away Yoplait and we took away costs. We added acquisitions and we added capacity build, and particularly in the export piece and some of the other plants. And we couldn't have done the brand work without doing that adding and subtracting piece of the business model. And we had to do that on the run. We had to do it on the hoof. We couldn't, unlike maybe a pure startup, we couldn't actually design this from the get-go. We were running a 300 million euro business at the same time as trying to do this. So that was the balance we had to get. And hats off to all colleagues who actually helped to work with this while we were getting to this point and this clarity. It could be said that it's easy to write these charts down after the fact. At the time, some of these weren't quite so clear, and I think that would be a fair criticism. But this is what we were doing. We couldn't get at the brand work without being able to get the business model right, and that's the key thesis of what I'm trying to say this evening. So let me give you an example, and I'll go in just to talk about Supermilk just for one moment. We did extensive market research to help direct our thoughts. At the same time as we were deconstructing the business, we reconfigured our full portfolio. On the milk piece, we reconfigured it into two areas. We said there's a standard branded milk portfolio and there's a value-added milk portfolio. And value-added milk is premium functional milks, lactose-free, flavoured milk, heart-active milks for cholesterol reducing, functional milks including slimline milks with added iron, and so on and so on. We had to reassess all our plant capabilities. Not all our plants and all our lines could actually do what we wanted them to do for our products. And we had to build a narrative around our value-added milks vision. We just couldn't say, let's write something down. We had to build a narrative and build a story around it, and this is what we did. And let me talk about Supermilk for a moment. So this is a very quick summary of the case study. Our consumers, the insight we had from the research we did, and the research was extensive and repeated and extensive again, was that consumers will not care enough about vitamin D, which was our important point I'll come back to in a moment, unless they feel it's a mass issue that affects everyone. People need to be motivated, and we got a huge learning, which is in areas which have a functional benefit, there was a massive amount of self-referral. Interesting actually listening to Kieran earlier on about Facebook, because maybe the whole online piece has more to do with us and we can do more with it than we actually give it credit for at the moment in that respect. The amount of self-referral and near referral, so in-laws, either mother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, daughters-in-laws in particular, because of the amount of female shopping there is on the milk category, is really important to us. And getting people to talk around vitamin D was seen as an important piece. The ambition we set ourselves was to unlock the growth potential, which we thought was huge in Supermilk. If everyone moved right now from the average amount of milk they consume in private label, so if the whole country just bought private label and moved the same amount of milk in Supermilk, it would cost them about €400 extra a year. It also would solve their vitamin D problem forever, if they did it for more than 1 year, I guess. But forever is a long time, I guess. But that's important, because vitamin D is an issue. It's a huge issue in Ireland, by the way. It's a huge issue in many respects. But we saw ourselves having massive opportunity in that area, and how are we actually going to unlock it? We had to cause mass reappraisal of the whole brand and of the proposition we were offering, and getting people at all ages to make a switch. And actually make the switch is a bit like there was an electricity ad or a gas ad for a while back for make the switch. We're trying to get people to make the switch from regular usage of standard milk or private label milk into Supermilk. To do that, we had to deconstruct the brand, a bit like we had to deconstruct the business. So Super, strangely enough, the brand name Super was owned by us but had never been protected. I'll come back to that. We only had it available in low fat, and therefore it's not suitable for children under the age of 3 or so. We only had it available in 1 litre, which wasn't suitable for families. When we looked at bringing 2 litre out, it was the wrong price point, and actually in a carton wouldn't fit in the fridges. Which is a big problem. It would fit in American fridges, not in Irish fridges. We didn't have full availability. We still don't. We don't have it in Aldi and Lidl, but we didn't have it in full availability, even within the traditional retail environment. And although we called it Super, we weren't really saying what it was super at. It was kind of an amalgam of different things. And there were issues in consuming, which were perceived issues about whether it'd be good for cooking and whether kids could open it because of the packaging we used. So we reconstructed it based on the clear evidence that the vitamin D was an issue for consumers, like a really big issue, that we could overcome the versatility of the product, that we could use it in more ways, and we could get issues around ubiquity and referrals right if we use the right tools. So we reconstructed the brand. We sent, this was the interesting piece, and you don't get trained in college for this. We had to send cease and desist letters to all our customers, all our major competitors, north and south of the border, to stop using the word super because it wasn't theirs. Oh, and by the way, we'll keep on buying super that was made by us and on their shelves. And because it was legal, and we just said, listen, nothing personal here, but we're going to sue the housing father, we actually got away with it. We just about got away within a couple of weeks of losing the protection system that was there. We managed to get everyone to cease and desist. We introduced a regular fat at 3.5% fat to complement low fat, which meant it was suitable for children. We introduced the 2 litre carton, then brought it back down to 1.75, and that allowed us to get placings in the supermarket and then bring it down to the price point that mattered. We drove nationwide distribution, including new customers, because we brought along Weatherline with us, which is the weather sponsorship that we had, and that brought along what we call AYR, all year round visibility for the product. We built a huge ecosystem around vitamin D, which I'll come back to in a moment, which we believe to be a unique selling proposition. And we changed the product composition to make sure that people didn't have a problem with it when it was being heated. Some people did have perceived problems that they thought it was becoming scaly. And we also removed the internal cap seal to make sure that kids could open the product and stop people having to think that they had to get out of prison to get the super milk into their glasses. We have continuous brand ID refresh. The pack that I'm showing there on the left-hand side is the new pack. The pack I showed earlier on it's subtly changed, but quite different in feel. And we have soft associations with healthcare professionals on an ongoing basis. And we bring in some of the world experts, the world-renowned experts on vitamin D to actually talk to Pat Kenny's and to Ray Darcy's and others on an ongoing basis to make sure they realise that vitamin D is a problem. So this is a very extensive program. It's not impossible to do because an awful lot of it is done quietly, subtly, and over time. Although it actually sounds very extensive, it actually is very manageable and not very expensive. This is our media strategy. This is what we call the Super Milk ecosystem. And if I could read it for those who can't see, we have engage, educate and reward and influence, and then we just drive all the different pieces about whether it's bought for, paid for or free. And free includes all the social media stuff and the referral stuff I talked about earlier on. We've built a very extensive ecosystem which is constantly monitored, and we build huge research resources around how we do it, including through the work that Board Bia does. And we do genuinely call it the ecosystem that people need to be able to understand across our brand team, myself, and our consumers and customers need to be able to understand what we're doing through the year across a number of different areas: engage, educate, reward, and influence, whether we buy it or get it for free. So it's extensive, but again, it's a way of thinking more than anything else. The whole piece is backed up, and I won't put the ad up for the moment. Supporting healthy bones for life. It's all about trying to push a healthy bones agenda through vitamin D. You can't absorb calcium unless you've got vitamin D. You can't get vitamin D except through sunlight or through fortification of certain foods and maybe oily fish. So if you go to, and we've spent some time, we've travelled into Australia and New Zealand on this, they have a vitamin D problem because there's so much sunshine there, they actually tell kids you can't go out. If you go to Saudi Arabia in the Middle East, they have a vitamin D problem because it's far too bright and sunny. They're all gowned up, men and women, and they don't spend any time outside. In Ireland, we just don't have the sun. That's not a problem. At that point of view, we just don't have the sun. But we have a vitamin D problem, and it's a significant issue for all genders, or even both genders, I haven't thought of a third, both genders and all ages. And it's only something that's really catching on now. We believe that it does give mass appeal to the product. Coming towards the end, Chairman, all of the measures we have for the brand are positive and almost immediately became positive once we actually put this ecosystem together based on the simple truths that we had. Brand is in volume growth in an otherwise static market. The brand consideration scores and conversion ratios are up across all key metrics that we have. The brand commitment scores, in other words, committed to the brand, including the key one that we look at, which is the net promotion score, a net promoter score, which is, it's a very harsh measure about people being willing to promote the brand to other people. It's up by 15 points, is one of the highest that's been measured, and it would rank higher than some of the other measures we have for our performance nutrition products and sports nutrition products around the world. And the brand equity scores are back to the highest ever recorded levels. With the brand with a real advantage score has increased by 5 percentage points, which is all very positive. But the most important thing is we're growing volume in an otherwise static market with a super premium product. Let me just give you a very brief example about one of the other areas that we did, which is home delivery I referred to very briefly. Our fastest growing part of the business is home delivery. Our fastest growing product range in home delivery is our super premium product, Supermilk. And it does go to prove that if you've got the right business model and the right approach to it, you don't have to become reliant on the same old all the time. This is just a very simple model about we have a significant amount of energy and effort behind home delivery. Home delivery was seen as the old milkman with a horse-drawn cart outside and was dying, literally. The horses were dead. A lot of the systems were dying. There was no real backup. There was no administration system. When I joined the company, within a couple of years, someone said, oh, by the way, there's no one available who actually can keep our IT software, which is around the milk agent delivery system, alive. If it falls once, we can never rebuild it. It's gone. So we had to make a decision to actually decide to get out of it or to invest in behind it as part of our deconstruction and where all our values are and what we're trying to do. We can now cover the country with 85% of the population is now covered by our home delivery system. We have a full product range. We don't put a whole lot of stuff on it in terms of newspapers are always asking, can we use newspapers? And people are asking for specialty food items. We don't do it. We keep it very strict to our own portfolio. It has significant increase, and most importantly, we've actually built an IT platform which allows for a significant amount of our customers to actually engage with their milkmen, not through us, because we're silent in the background, but through an iPad or an iPhone or their laptop at home, directly to their milkman or the milkman to them to order a change or pay for the order, which is a big issue because that was always the problem in the past. And in a sense, the new idea from old channels, old ideas, we now have 130,000 houses. About 12% of all houses in the country now buy from us at least once a milk. At least once a week. We think that'll increase by about, very close to twice that in the next number of years, and we're investing behind that. 20,000 houses, or even more than that, I saw some numbers this morning, 20,000 plus houses now buy their milk through the milkman.ie, mymilkman.ie website. About half of all the volume is super premium, or what we call value-added milk branded businesses. There's no private label on it, and we make no bones about that. This is all about a premium or standard branded milk. The business has doubled despite austerity, despite all the other hassles and haggles that have been out there. We've doubled our business in the last couple of years, and it is our fastest growing sector of the overall business. So, in summary, if I could, just looking back at what I've learned over the last number of years, we have to find a way to ensure that the business model is fit to work with your simple truth or your USP. We have to make sure that you can fund it adequately. Too often, the cost savings are taken to the bottom line, not reinvested behind the business. And how do you actually go do that for the now and for the going forward period, and give yourself the confidence around it? Value is not all about price. Value is very much about the functional benefit or the delivery benefit you can give to a product. You can change must-stock commodity lines into a virtuous business model if you go about it the right way. This is not about doomsday. You actually can make commodity items must-stock where there's oversupply and no money be made on average. You can make that into a virtuous business model. FMCG is not all about retail. We've had very good success in food service, and we're increasingly moving into the home delivery business. And not all milk is the same. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.